Thank you for letting me present today. I miss being in person with everyone, but I'm grateful to be a part of this hybrid conference. This presentation today is titled Innovative Solutions, Enabling Technology for Independent Living. In this presentation, I will introduce and describe the term enabling technology and how it works, highlight some enabling technology solutions, introduce you to some individuals that are using enabling technology, and end with some examples of how a caregiver or support professional can use enabling technology to gather quantitative data. So hi there, I'm Emily Dansu Grasso, and I'm the marketing and sales coordinator at Simply Home. I'm also a sibling to an individual who has a developmental disability. My older sister, Noelle, who lives in Florida, has definitely motivated me as an advocate and a professional to learn best practices and seek out tools that lead to greater independence. I have a professional background in direct service and program development in the areas of wellness and employment. And currently, in my role working for Simply Home, I am doing marketing and sales and really working with provider agencies who are looking to use enabling technology as a solution to support individuals with living in a least restrictive setting or in the community. Simply Home is an enabling technology company that works throughout the US to provide customized technology solutions that support the dignity of risk, self-determination, and independence. And the founders of the company, they got their start in long-term care services. And it was actually within their own company where they were in search of such a solution at the time to transition individuals that were living in institutions into a community setting. And really, there wasn't a solution that was available. So they kind of started with creating some of these technology solutions first for their own company. And then in the early 2000s, understanding the need that other organizations and families and individuals had, they started Simply Home. So, what is enabling technology? Enabling technology can refer to a lot of different pieces of technology, and it really gets the name enabling based on the usage. So, as you see here, you can see some of the off the shelf solutions, like maybe you're familiar with an Amazon Alexa or an Ecobee thermostat. But if the technology empowers independence and self determination, if it's proactive versus being reactive, and can be customized to support an individual's goals and desired outcomes, it is enabling technology. So on the screen, you see some of these off the shelf solutions. And then you also see here, which I'll be spending a lot of time kind of talking about how it works, different sensors like a door or window sensor or a motion sensor, and also a medication dispenser. So how does enabling technology work? I like this chart because it does a nice job of describing the different steps of how enabling technology works. So with our sensor-based system, the Firefly, the way that the sensors work is they're always passively monitoring activity. So they're always gathering information. They do this by sending information to a centralized location to what we call the Firefly system, the hub. So the sensors are communicating with the hub, and then it's going back to the cloud. When that information is gathered, based on how the technology is customized, will determine step two, what has to happen next. So if there is a concern, say for example, a front door is open and left open during the night hours, then you can send an alert to a caregiver. Alerts can be a text message, a phone call, or an email. And this message can be customized, and it doesn't have to be sent to just one person. You might want to send it to multiple people on someone's care team. Or If a caregiver is not able to respond to that alert, they can escalate that alert to the next person providing support. The second way the technology can be programmed is by a prompt. This can be an audible prompt on a local speaker in someone's home, or the individual may receive a prompt or redirection through a text, email, or phone call. An example of that would be if somebody has not accessed their medicine at a certain time of day, then give them a prompt, a local announcement reminding them to take your medicine. So, for example, John, take your medicine. And if John still doesn't take his medicine, then you can send an alert to a caregiver. That third part is controlling something, an environmental control. So if somebody's not out of bed by a certain time, and that information is gathered through using a bed sensor, then turn on a light, blink a light in the room, helping them to get out of bed. Or if somebody gets out of bed during the middle of the night, light their path to the bathroom and turn off the light once they're back in bed in order to avoid a potential fall. And then that third step is really gathering the data and looking at trends. So because the technology is always passively monitoring activity, you're able to run reports, and you can run reports based on how the technology is customized. So maybe you want to look at how many times somebody needs to be alerted to take their medicine, or how many times are they accessing food during the night. And so you can run those reports directly through our client portal. So this is a photo of our demo apartment, which you can check out online. In Asheville, we also have an in-person apartment. We don't have as many in-person visitors. So we did have a YouTube video that kind of walks through the demo apartment. And I'm not going to spend so much time describing each piece of technology because it's really not about the shiny gadget or the technology and find a piece of tech and then, trying to match it to somebody's needs. But instead, it's really looking at those outcomes, those concerns, those preferences of the individual, and then customizing a solution to fit those desired outcomes. And really, there's an exhaustive list of technology that can be used in this way to empower independence. So it's best to focus on the individual. But the one thing you'll notice here is the two different Wi-Fi symbols. We have the blue and the red symbols. The blue symbols are showing you the sensor-based system, the Firefly. So this here is the hub. It's about the size, it can fit in the size of your hand. So it's like the size of some very large index cards, maybe about a pound. And the Firefly talks with different sensors throughout one's home. A sensor could be a motion sensor. Sometimes we pair a motion sensor with a stove sensor. So a way that you could customize that technology is if the stove is turned on for 30 minutes and there's no motion detected in the kitchen, then alert a caregiver by texting them immediately, letting them know that the stove is on and there's no motion detected, so they can follow up and provide support. You can also use a door or a window sensor. And you might not need to know every single time the door is open. You might only want to be alerted if the door is open, maybe during certain times of day, or if the door remains open. And you can decide, when you need to receive those alerts. With door window sensors, you can also use those on different cabinets. So for example, if you want to know if medicine is being accessed, if this cabinet where medicine is kept is open during certain times of day, you can be notified of that information. Or if there's a concern about somebody not accessing food by a certain time in the morning, by 9 a.m., you can get that information as well. There's a bed sensor. And the great thing about these sensors is they can work differently based on the time of day as well. For example, one young man, David, that you'll get to learn a little bit more about in a couple of slides, he uses his bed sensor when he gets into bed at night. He gets an audible prompt reminding him to put on his CPAP machine. If he's not out of bed certain days of the week when he needs to get ready for work, his mom will get a text notifying her that he's still in bed so she can follow up and provide support. We also have a water sensor. So if there's concern about somebody getting out of the shower and slipping, we can use a water sensor to notify someone that water has been detected. So those are just a few of the different sensors that can work with the Firefly system. Other standalone technology solutions that can provide support would be a medication dispenser. There are many different medication dispensers on the market. So, in terms of looking for a solution that works best for you, you can do your research and see which solution can support your needs and address your concerns. The medication dispenser that we use, I actually use with my dad, so I'm a big fan of. You can set up to 28 doses in advance. And when it's time to take your medication, you get a single dose that is administered. And if the medicine isn't taken from the device, you can set up those step 2 alerts or reminder prompts. The way I use this with my dad is if he doesn't access his medicine at the time that it's due, he will get a phone call reminding him. If he still doesn't take the medication from the device, I'll get a text message letting me know so I can follow up with him and see why he hasn't taken his medicine. With this device, you can set up to 4 alarms, reminding someone to take their medicine. Another thing that we sometimes will recommend is with our Firefly system, we can use panic pendants or different switches so that if somebody maybe was overwhelmed or didn't know what to do and they just needed immediate assistance, they could just push a button and that button would notify care team that somebody needed that immediate assistance. Oftentimes with these switches or panic pendants, we'll put those in areas like by the side of the bed or the side of the toilet, somewhere they're going to be easily accessed in that state of confusion or emergency where someone would need assistance or help. And then we also have a PERS, Personal Emergency Response System, which some of you might be familiar with. And of course, with the PERS, that does get sent to a call center that can triage that call. So maybe emergency assistance is needed immediately or not. Maybe that person just needs somebody on their care team to provide support. And so the call center can make that determination and get the message to the right person. I will say that at Simply Home, where I work, we don't use cameras within one's home. We really want to respect one's dignity and privacy, and that's why we use these sensors. However, we understand there is the need to be able to provide some drop-in remote support. So we have a partnership with a company called Nucleus Care, and Nucleus Care has a solution where it's a very easy to use tablet where a caregiver or a family member can drop into the device to provide a check-in if the individual is okay with keeping that privacy shutter up. The tablet itself has a 120-degree view of the space, and so it can somebody can just drop into that device and check in with that person. So you'll see some more technology solutions throughout this presentation. I'd like to share this quote because I think it's very important, especially when we start to consider using technology as a natural support, that we call to mind this idea of dignity of risk and the importance of allowing somebody the opportunity to try, whether that means learning from the consequences of their failures or learning and growing from their successes and acquiring new skills. So technology really allows for that dignity of risk. However, it has that safety net in place, giving caregivers that peace of mind and ensuring that somebody on one's support team can get notified if help is truly needed. So right now I'm going to introduce you to David. He is someone that's been using our enabling technology for about 6 years. And he actually started with our technology in his apartment. You'll listen to his mom, Becky, who will kind of talk about him moving out and some of her fears around that. So he transitioned into an apartment. He was doing a post-secondary program. And his long-term goal was actually to live in his own log cabin on some property that is family owned. And in this last year, he actually was able to build his log cabin and move into his log cabin. And it was just amazing to see David kind of work towards his goals and also to see how the technology could support David and transition with him into his new location.
Hi.
Where we started with this journey was when he was a baby. We just never took no for an answer. We had a pediatrician who told us that the only person who would limit David is us. And so we decided when he was 2 weeks old that we would not limit him in his destiny.
Petrolapians. All petrolapians. Trophies.
On paper, it looks like he has a lot of limitation, but in reality, he's able to do everything that he puts his mind to. It's just a little bit differently. When he graduated, of course, the expectation was that he would have his own place. And I was scared. I didn't know how we were going to make that work. And I was the obstacle because I didn't know how he could do it without a roommate, and I didn't know how it was going to work. Actually, the coordinator for his program at Western, she started helping us advocate with his care coordinator with Smoky Mountain Mental Health to get a system for him so he would not need a full-time live-in. And it's worked beautifully. There's sensors all over this apartment, and if a door opens, it'll let me know that a door opens when I'm not expecting a door to open. And it respects his privacy, but allows me that peace of mind to know that he is moving around and everything's well.
David, close and lock your front door.
The verbal prompting, just basically what we did was we looked at the different areas in his routine that he needed to be prompted on. And we modeled the routine, his daily schedule around the prompting.
I said, David, lights out. CPAP on.
Yeah.
David, wake up. David, fix my breakfast.
The other piece is that I can track him through the computer, through the routine, whether I know it's prompting him or not. So if I get the wheelies in the morning, like, has he started his breakfast yet? I can log in without having to aggravate him and annoy him with phone calls. He has created a lot of his own destiny by his willingness to take risk and my willingness to allow him to take risk. He networked and got his own job over in Graham County at the EMS base. And the people love him, and he does a great job. And I think about how if I had been there hovering, worrying about, oh, is he going to do it properly? Is he going to make a mistake? Are the people going to accept him? He would still be sitting at home every day. Or he'd be sitting, in a place where he's not satisfied. And so I think it's so vitally important that those of us who do not live in the disability world give our fellow human beings who just happen to have a disability the option to make their own choice, and for us to support that. When we don't support it, then we are creating a destiny for them that they don't want, and that's not fair.
So David's system that you saw on the screen, that's actually a Butler system. That's another sensor-based system that we use at Simply Home. Another term I want to highlight, and David's mom also talked about, is self-determination. Sometimes as caregivers or support staff, with our best of intentions, we may still be limiting the beliefs as to what is possible in terms of independent living, or what is best for those individuals that we love and care for. With enabling technology, it can allow for self-determination and opportunities for individuals with disabilities to choose how and where they want to live. So now I'm going to introduce you to Steve.
Steve is somebody who is very well liked by community members. He participates in local events, the VFW pancake breakfasts, he goes to the coffee shops, pizza joints. Those are things that are very important to Steve, and to not be dependent on staff for when they're ready to go means a tremendous amount to him.
I like the location because I know the area pretty good.
Wildwood went through an accreditation with CQL, and Steve was a part of the POMS interview process. And during that process, Steve had indicated that he wanted to move out of the residence. And it was not something that was on the radar for the staff at all. It never came up in the multiple planning meetings that we had for him over the years.
Steve lived at the McLean Street residence. I was a counselor for Steve. I never pictured Steve living in a supportive apartment. I left the company, and when I came back, they said, Steve's in his own apartment. And I said, excuse me? Who's in his own apartment? Steve's in his own apartment. And I said, no way.
Community-supported living is a service model creating opportunities for people to self-determine how they want to live in the community. Home and community activities optimize independence and inclusion while ensuring the rights of privacy and dignity.
There was a NYSACRA BIP grant that was in collaboration with Simply Home, and I submitted Steve's story, and immediately it was something that everyone saw as a potential win.
I wanted to take care of myself more, cook and clean and everything on my own.
Much of what was happening with Steve was incidental difficulty or inconveniences, like him losing his keys. That's an inconvenience. It's not safety. The stove, that's a real safety concern. So we wanted to ensure that when Steve was cooking, that we reduce the amount of risk to him.
When you turn the stove on, it says to take all the unnecessary stuff off. Make sure it's not a fire.
If we're not given the opportunity to fail, then we're never given the opportunity to grow. Getting the supports when he needs them, as opposed to having supports around all the time, it's a much better living environment for him. What was missing from Steve's planning process was really what Steve wanted and what his dreams and desires were, making it truly person-centered. And that's where the technology really became important, because the technology allowed Steve to be able to work within the limitations that he has, but he was in control of it. He identified that this was the technology that would assist him.
Steve is so proud that he lives on his own. When he was in the residence, we had to prompt him to do everything all day long. Here, it's a pop-in. Steve, what do you want to do today?
Any kind of change for Steve has to be predictable, and he has to buy into the process. So if Steve was going to make a successful transition, any introduction of technology needed to happen early in the process so that when he transitioned to community living, the technology would just transition with him. It was really customizing what Steve's needs were and what we know works for him, and designing the technology to meet those needs.
Well, it helps with my meds in the morning, med box, and the Butler helps me too. It tells me to check the iPad.
Steve initiated, I have an iPad, let me use a checklist so that I can get through my tasks at the end of the day. So now what we then did is we introduced a new prompt into the Butler system to check your iPad.
Steve, check your iPad for your schedule.
What's really interesting is because Steve is somebody who is very independent, he has relationships in the community that we will never know about. That's a risk that Steve puts himself out there, and the community accepts him.
I took the bus to the movies too. Yeah, we go to Stewart's, yeah. It's right across the road.
Steve is more sociable now. He has more confidence in himself. he lives on his own. He will tell you that I live on my own. Like, the confidence has grown leaps and bounds.
What would Steve tell his friends who are considering moving out on their own?
I would say they should try to do it because it's good to take care of yourself.
He trusted us enough to be able to risk, and we risked together.
Okay, so the last quote I want to share is just this quote here. For people without disabilities, technology makes things easier. For people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. I think all of us are aware through this pandemic and as a society how much we all benefit from technology and use technology in our everyday life, sometimes without even thinking about it. Even now, we're connecting through our computers. Technology for individuals with disabilities truly makes things possible. However, some solutions that we all use in our everyday life, like maybe some smart home solutions like a Ring doorbell, may still not be as accessible to an individual with a disability, whether that's due to dexterity challenges or say for a non-reader who's using an Ecobee thermostat and has a hard time adjusting the temperature based on the number, they may need large picture-based icons. And so those are some of the ways, even at Simply Home, that we're able to customize some of those technology solutions, some of those off-the-shelf solutions to ensure that they're truly accessible by the end user. So the last person I want to share his video with you is Jonathan, who's using some of the environmental controls.
That opens the door. This is the lamp on, bedroom fan on, and this is how I control my thermostat. These down through here are quick links to all my favorite channels, which is sports. And these up here are quick links, so when I'm back there and I'm watching TV, say someone knocks on the door, I can open the door from here. Lamp off.
Welcome to our Simply Homes customer web portal video on how to set up a check-in. In this video, your client's care team will learn how to schedule new check-ins and update existing check-ins.
As you know, technology has a mind of its own sometime. My apologies for that. So Jonathan uses our Home Assistant. And with a Home Assistant, we're able to put this app or this technology onto one smartphone or a tablet or a computer. And it really allows for somebody to be able to control their environment. So maybe somebody has a challenge with swiping the screen. So instead they need to hold down a fist to change screens. We can create that customization. And a lot of these smart home technologies can also be integrated with that that Simply Home system. So for example, if there's somebody that's hard of hearing, maybe when somebody is at their front door and they push their Ring doorbell, instead of making a sound in one's home, we want to turn on a light, notifying that person that somebody's at the front door. Or with a smart lock, If somebody's transitioning to living on their own for the first time, and there's some concern that when they leave for work, they'll forget to lock their front door, you could pair a smart lock with a motion sensor. So if no motion is detected at a certain time of day, then lock the front door. Different environmental controls, some of which I've mentioned, is that Ecobee thermostat, an automatic door opener or close, a smart lock, a Ring doorbell, and smart lights. So this is the Firefly, and you also got to hear stories from individuals that use our Butler system. And both the Firefly and the Butler are sensor-based systems. And the Firefly and the Butler, those are the base units. Those are the hubs that are gathering that information from the different sensors. And we would recommend, in terms of working with Simply Home and working with different technology vendors when you're looking to start to use enabling technology to support individuals within your care, it's a very person-centered process. There's an assessment and then a system recommendation as to which system will best support an individual's needs. The Firefly is definitely our latest version. You can tell even in the size. As technology changes, things become smaller, more affordable. So this is a more small, discreet, and affordable system. However, there are still some scenarios where we might recommend the Butler. For example, if somebody is hard of hearing and they need to use a bed shaker to kind of help them to get information that it's time to get out of bed, we would have to recommend our Butler, because at this time the Firefly cannot be paired with the bed shaker. So with the Firefly and the Butler, there is a client portal, or we call it the client portal. You call it the Firefly portal or the Butler portal. And this is where you can go in and have the ability to not only see the status of a person that's being supported with technology. Here you'll see these red, yellow, and green smiley faces. So this is actually an example of a provider agency that has multiple people that are using technology as a natural support. And red means an alert was sent and not followed up with. So maybe a caregiver received an alert that Sally's door is open and she hasn't acknowledged that alert or followed up yet. So that client's status, Sally's status, is red, notifying her care team that somebody needs to follow up with that notification. Yellow means maybe an alert went out and it was missed or delayed. And then green means everything is good and everything is online. So with the technology and with that assessment that occurs, it does come pre-programmed with those specific outcomes that you're looking to achieve. With our Firefly system, we do have the ability on the client portal to make updates to outcomes. So for example, maybe somebody's support person, their contact information changes. You can go directly onto the desktop and make those changes to that support team's information. And with the outcomes, as technology being a natural support, it has to be dynamic, and maybe a certain alert isn't working anymore, or the person doesn't need to be alerted of their bathroom routine because every time they open the bathroom door at 9 a.m., they are completing their bathroom routine with 100% accuracy or success. So you could change those rules, or you could delete those outcomes. Or if, for example, somebody maybe lives on their own during the week and then on the weekends they return to their family's home, you might want to go into the system and pause the outcomes, because you don't need to know that there's no motion detected in the living room because nobody's in the home for that weekend. So with this client portal, you can go on and make those changes directly. Similar to the green, yellow, red status of the person being supported by tech, you also can see that information about each piece of technology. So you're able to know if a battery is running low or a system is offline or tampered with. If a system is ever offline or tampered with, you would also receive notification via text, email, or phone call immediately. But having this information helps you to maintain the technology and ensure that everything is online and supporting the person in the intended way. Also on the client portal, you can see a timeline of 24 hours of activity gathered by the sensors. Like I said, the technology is always passively monitoring activity. And you don't need to know every single time the door is open or motion is detected. However, it might be nice to be able to reflect on this 24 hours. For example, say somebody that works in the community or goes to a day program typically doesn't have any behaviors on the job, and then one day they are acting out or just having some challenges. And then when you go back and look at this data, you can see, wow, okay, well, that makes sense because Ben was out of bed, off and on throughout the night. And you have this quantitative data to be able to really understand a person and to be able to provide the necessary support. And then, of course, there is the reporting tool. So you can export data into a CSV. We can also link one's EHR, so you can kind of move between the two screens on the client portal. And this just really helps in terms of a person's support plan, really having data that supports one's goals that they're looking to achieve, whether, like I said, that's taking medication without needing that additional alert or text message, or not needing a prompt to open their refrigerator at a certain time in the morning, ensuring that they're eating at the right time. So I just want to share this quote. I had the opportunity to interview this young man's mom, and her son is on the autism spectrum, and he uses our Simply Home system. And she just talked about the peace of mind that she gets, knowing that when the stove comes on, she gets that notification that the stove is on, and she doesn't have to nag him or be concerned that he's going to leave the stove on, because she'll get that notification if the stove is left on. Say, for example, he gets distracted by his video game and forgets the stove is on. And so if she needs to, she can follow up with a phone call, but only if he needs that support. So the system really works to empower him and not really rely on her for those prompts, and gives her that peace of mind that he's not dependent on her for support and reminders. So just some key points to remember. Technology can be used as a natural support. You got to see in a couple of videos how some individuals actually, even their environment changes, they move to a new location, their technology can move with them. With the client portal and being able to change outcomes, as somebody's needs change, so can the way that the technology supports those needs. So it's very dynamic. With technology, there's no one size fits all solution. So that's why it's important to be outcome driven versus device driven. So really looking at what are those specific outcomes to that individual? What are those concerns? What are those preferences? What are those desires and goals? And then building a system of technology around them to support those desired outcomes and goals. I think it's important, especially when we talk about technology, there's always that fear of replacing humans or replacing in-person support. And it's not that. It really is a complement to care. It's allowing for the individual to have the utmost independence while still ensuring that when support is needed, not just having support, over supporting or support just in case, but when it's truly needed, support can be reached and the individual can receive that in-person support. So here's my email and our website address. Feel free to look more into Simply Home and some of the technology solutions that we offer. Working in different states, we do work in a lot of states with the Medicaid waiver. And depending on the state, there is sometimes funding available for some of these solutions. Thank you, and I hope everybody enjoys the conference. Take care.